So we're going to be learning Gimp, which is a poor man's Photoshop. Here you can see I was working on Mr. Moses. But there are literally hundreds and hundreds of tools through the drop-down menus, through the toolbars, through the toolbox. Lots to learn, and it can be overwhelming. But I thought instead of teach you tool by tool, we just jump into a type of lesson. And so one of the lessons that I like to start out with is this black and white type of photography with a color splash. And so you can see really unique and beautiful type of imagery we can get, and it's actually fairly easy to do in Gimp. So we'll get started. I'm going to go ahead and close out that and start with a new picture. So maybe you've taken a picture with your camera, or you have one from the internet, and you just go File, Open, and you would search where that might be. And so it's really important to know where you save things to. Another option would be just to drag it onto your Gimp window. And so for me, I have one on my desktop, and so I could just drag that on there. And I thought this would be a good image to try to do the black and white with color splash photography. So we're going to start learning some tools. The first one that we're going to focus on actually is over here. We have a bunch of different windows that we could be looking at, but we're going to focus on this one that looks like three little pieces of paper. It's actually our layers window, and we will use this quite a bit as we go along. But towards the bottom we have some other tools, and as you float your mouse over the top of them, it gives you a description. So the one we're going to utilize right now is this one that looks like a rectangle overlapping another rectangle. And it's basically create a duplicate of the layer. And so when I click that, we now have two color images up here. And so what I'm going to do first is I'm going to take this top image and make it black and white because we want a black and white, and then we'll be showing the color beneath it. So at the top I have a drop-down menu that says Colors, and the way I like to make it black and white is to go down to where it says Desaturate. There's some options here that give it different color tones. Sepia is a popular one with like old Western type of photography. It could be fun. I'm actually not going to use that. I'm going to say cancel because we want black and white. So I'll go Desaturate, and I'll say color to gray. When you guys will have time, and I'd like you to try some of these other things, but we'll go color to gray to get moving along. And you can see it changes it to color to gray. With most tools, there's options to kind of manipulate them and change settings. So I'm going to pull this up, and you'll notice as I pull it up, the hair on this girl gets darker, and I kind of like it that way. It gets a little bit more vivid, and so I'm going to go ahead and press OK. And now over here on my layers, you'll notice I have a black and white photo and blue ones underneath. These little eyeballs, if you click on them, so basically I shut the eyeball and I'm just seeing underneath. If I open it up, I'm seeing what's on top. And I can see both layers. And so that's something that you also want to know how to utilize. All right, so what we want to do is we're going to right click on this black and white layer, and we're going to add what's called a layer mask. So it's right here, add layer mask. And it'll give you some options, but we're going to leave it as is. We want white to be full opacity. So I'll just click add, and we're moving right along. So what a layer mask does, if you grab some type of painting tool, I'm going to use the paintbrush here. And so any of these tools, if you click on them, that's how you select them. If you double click, which I'm going to do, click, click, I get some options. Okay, so I can change the style of the brush. I could change the size of the brush. So right now you'll see my brush is rather small. So I could make it huge, which that would be much too large. And so there's all kinds of things that I hope to encourage you to kind of experiment with to see what they do when you get the opportunity. Anyways, so the layer mask. Let's go back to my layers window right here. You'll notice this white screen. This is the layer mask, and I'm going to just put a big X So you can see how that affects. So I'll go, oops. So actually I need to change my foreground color to black. And so I can switch from black to white. If I ever want to change colors, I can just double click. And there's options to change things. You just click in an area and you can add it. But we want black and white. So now that I'm black, oops, I can I was going to draw an X. And you'll notice over here in the layer mask, it shows what you did. Now, so black reveals a color. And obviously I don't want that because that doesn't look good. Because I use Control Z. We should know that from our other experiences with computers that Control Z usually undoes the last few things we did. So I'm now going to zoom in by holding Control and rolling my mouse forward. And I am going to close in on this eye. And so when I draw with, or if I color with black, it's going to reveal the color from the photo beneath it. And so I want to make these eyes look really good. To get to the other eye, I could go down here and simply drag the bar over. But another way to do that is the scroll wheel on your mouse. If you press that down, you can drag things over. So I'm just going to drag it over that way. Sometimes I use both options. It's just nice to know both of them. So here's the other eyeball. And again, I'm going to color it. And then just to show you, if I happen to make a mistake, I don't have to use Control Z. Black reveals, so I'm revealing color, but I don't want that. But if I switch back to white, I can then conceal. So if you happen to draw or color outside the lines, don't worry, you can always fix that by painting or concealing with white. So I'm going to zoom back out and see what we got. We have some brightly colored eyes, and some people might leave it there. Some people might want to color a different part of the picture. If we were to do the shirt that's also blue, that would look really good, but that would take us into another tool that I wanted. That would take a little bit more time. So for the sake of time, I'm going to just do her lips. So I'm going to zoom in, and I will change it back to black because black reveals. And you'll notice right now you're probably thinking, well, you're revealing some of her skin tone that's not her lips. Don't worry, I'll go back and conceal that with white, but I want to make sure I have all the red part of her lips. And I'll even go into the teeth a little bit just to make sure. All right, now I'm going to switch back to white, and I'm going to change my brush down to a little bit smaller so I can kind of fine details and things. So, and I'm actually going to change, so you'll notice it has a hard edge or a soft edge. That makes it a little gentler when you're doing some of these things. Instead of just a distinct line, it'll kind of smooth out the edges. And so I'm going to just kind of go through here. Later on, I'll show you another way to selectively choose where you're going instead of just hand doing this. But for this first lesson, I thought this was just painting it in was simple. I wanted to make it short and sweet just to get you in and start learning some of the tools. So at this point, I'm going to zoom back out. And actually, I noticed here I forgot to do the teeth. So I'm actually going to make my brush a little smaller and get those teeth a little bit wider. All right, so there we go. I'll zoom back out. I'm going to go back to my layers menu. I want to do just a few more things. This looks good, but there's a few more things I wanted to add. If I go, I need to select on my colors window, and I'm even going to close the eyeball and go to the colors. Make sure I'm selected on the right layer. Sometimes I'll be seeing the correct layer, but I'll actually be working on the wrong layer. You got to select this layer. So I want to make her teeth a little wider. And so we have this tool right here at the end. It's called the dodge burn tool. And so I'm going to zoom in, and it's just going to make her teeth just a little bit whiter. You might be saying, Mr. Flanagan, those do not look white. And guess what? None of our teeth are actually pearly white. They've usually been photoshopped in some way, shape, or form. So you could do a couple layers of this. You don't want to go too much where it's unbelievable. I've done 2 layers now, and that may be, let's zoom out and see. So that looks pretty good. One last thing I might want to do is, so I'm going to turn the eyeball back on to see how it looks now. And actually, you might be saying, I don't see the color of the teeth, and that's true because I need to go back to my paintbrush. I need to reveal those teeth. Almost made that mistake myself. So you can't see those teeth because I haven't revealed them with my brush. So I'm going to, once again, make my brush a little bit bigger. And, whoa. And why did that happen? Because I'm on the wrong layer. So I'm going to go Control Z. I want to be on this top layer when I do the black. And you'll notice now the teeth show up much brighter. Okay, one last thing. Sometimes people want to change the color of the eyes. Like this girl already had uniquely brilliant eyes. I think they probably aren't naturally that way. They probably already photoshopped. But I'm going to select. So here we have some different select options. I'm going to use this rectangular select. I want to be on the color portion. I don't want to make the mistake I did before. I'm going to select everything around her eyeballs because I just want it to impact the color of her eyes. And so I'm going to go back again to colors. I'm going to go to our brightness contrast. And if I bring things up, you'll notice it kind of washes things out. If I turn it down, the brightness, it'll get a little darker. And we can get some unique looks on the eyes. If you actually wanted to change color itself, there's different ways to do that as well. We could go to color balance, and you have 3 basic colors, cyan, magenta, and yellow, and you could turn different layers up, and you'll see how as I pull that, it uniquely makes her eyes change colors. Now, we want it to be believable, but for the sake of art and me just being the artist, I'm going to say okay. And we will say, hey, here is my photo. It is black and white with color splash. Now, this rectangle won't show up at the end product, but I don't like to see it. So a tool that you're going to have to get used to using is to go Control-Shift-A, and that deselects everything. And you'll be using that a lot. So now we have a picture that was black and white with color splash. And the last thing we need to do, though, is to save it in the correct format. If you were still working on this and not done, you'd want to just go File, Save, and it would save in what's called a .xcf type of file. That is a Gimp file. You would not be able to see this photo on any other program on your phone or your computer in a .xcf. The only way you could see it is in Gimp. If you're done, you would need to export it. And so I'll pretend I'm done, and I'll say export, and we'll export it as a .jpg. This is a universally recognized picture file. I'll give it a slightly different name, a beautiful eyes, color splash, and I'm on my desktop, so always know where you're saving it to. And I'll click export, and then I already had one because I had practiced earlier, so I am going to replace it. And it gives you options. I could say, hey, I want the quality to be 100%. When you're thinking about file size, that might be important. We'll go ahead and leave it 100%. We'll say export, and now I have a photograph here on my desktop called Beautiful Eyes, and when I open it up, there it is. So hope you enjoyed this, and we'll continue to learn more tools in Gimp as we go on to different lessons. All right, good luck. have fun. Feel free to push play and pause as much as you need. And again, I encourage you to experiment with the different tools within Gimp.